Hey, Carl, Jason here. Yeah, well, I think what we need to do is we'll do an episode of our panel show where we talk about pantheons. But I guess my problem with the Marvel model, where they're just super powerful aliens, is how do clerics work? You know, but that's something we can discuss together on a panel discussion. So, but think about that, because that's a question I will be posing to you. Wahahaha. Okay, talk to you later.
Carl Rodriguez is the GMologist, GM extraordinaire, the GMologist.
All right, is this really smart to record while you're driving? We will find out. So I'm just coming back from lunch after a very exciting morning hanging out with my buddy who works on cars, and he helped me to, I watched while he changed out the brake pads in my 2011 Jeep Cherokee, Grand Cherokee Laredo, 3.6 liter. It's not the big monster V8, but I love it. It's a really nice vehicle. One of the better vehicles I've had. I can drive like 14 hours in this damn car with only a few stops. If only it had like a catheter attachment. So yeah, and then we went to lunch at this place called 2M, which was really good. And I'll probably go home and take a nap. I had this thing called the 2M sandwich, which was brisket and pork and sausage links, so pork sausage that they make with Oaxaca cheese. And it was topped with some chimichurri type sauce or salsa, and this place was really good. What I liked about the barbecue place, the barbecue is really good, so they definitely have a seasoned pit. And what I liked is that they did not. So when you go to some of these barbecue joints, the sides are underwhelming, and these guys dressed up their sides. They had this mac and cheese called chicharroni macaroni. So they had, like, you can imagine pork rinds crumpled up and put on top. It was on mac and cheese. It was very nice. And then they had like a Mexican, like if you had Mexican corn, was dressed up with that red powder stuff, chirimol, I think is what it's called. Well, they had it like broken down, like broken apart. Like you had corn, kerneled corn, and this chamoy with the powder, and with like Oaxaca cheese crumbles, which was amazing, right? So they really did up their stuff, their sides. And then their desserts look really impressive too, so I had to get one, which is probably going to induce even more sleep coma for me after food. Although I'm driving, I feel good. So, you know, I guess the diabetes isn't wasting me away just yet, as it's wont to do. So, you know, the metformin is working, so I'm not in like a food coma or anything like this, and I feel pretty alert and pretty good. I feel satisfied after eating that big giant sandwich. My buddy, he did not finish it, and I ate it like a sandwich. I compressed as much as I could and tried to fit it in my mouth, and it worked. Anyway, the dessert was this like ube cheesecake thing, and ube is this Filipino yam that's purple. And I have a selfie of a purple tongue, but I also have crumbs in my little mustachy thing, so maybe I don't know if I'll show it. But it's kind of funny that it made your tongue purple, at least temporarily, until your saliva, all the amylases and aces in your saliva dissolve that sugar and fat. So I guess that's a big diversion, because the original reason for this segment, other than the fact that I'm driving and I've been able to listen to 3 freaking podcasts today. So thank you, Spencer from Keep Off the Borderlands, Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and Lord Jason Hobbs of Hobbs Friends and Random Screed for keeping me entertained as I'm driving all over the freaking place in San Antonio today. But this was going to be like a recap of the Starfinder, but it's just like a ramble on as I drive. So, but the Starfinder was pretty fun last night. So we did the charter turn which is the first time we'd done it, and it took a little bit longer than I'd wanted just to go through all the mechanics. Effectively, you roll to see how much resource you have, and then after that, you roll the resource, determine what the player character is going to do during the downtime, and then after that, you determine what projects they're going to run. So they decided to do 2 projects because they rolled really well on the resources. They were able to get a free resource node because of where they landed in the settlement, and then they decided to improve the residential area. There had been some strife previously. There was a killing, murder in town, or a manslaughter event in town, and while things have died down and not become contentious and there's no unrest in the settlement, they decided to nip that in the bud by making the housing better. So they don't live in prefab housing, but are making organic housing based on where they live, and that seems to it gives a bonus to Accord, which helps to mitigate unrest. So they're looking in the long term to try to nip this situation in the bud. And then after that, we did some exploration. I do like the mechanic. I'm awarding XP for the mechanic because I'm going to pause here. And the reason for the pause is to, hopefully that'll be a little louder. The reason for the pause was I was driving through a school zone, and in Texas, if you're caught on the phone in a school zone, they take you out, and Greg Abbott has you shot if you're a different type of person. So better not to do that. I'm just kidding about that. You can get in trouble, and rightly so. You should be paying attention so you don't run over anybody. So anyway, I decided to award XP for the settlement turns to keep players' interest in the settlement phase of the game, because I do go through some mechanics and we do spend some time rolling dice and gaming, and because I want them to be higher level. Because when we did the exploration, they ran into trouble, but I think it was satisfying. So we did the exploration after that. They wanted to get out of town, explore more of their charter, so they could map out the territory, eventually add nodes to the charter, have resources, make the settlement bigger. So they're heading towards another potential landing site. The first hex they went through was uneventful, and then they have a buggy, so they can go they have a lot of actions they can take. They can easily move through claimed hexes and plains type hexes. The hex that they were going towards the settlement was a forest hex, so they explored it, and we rolled a random encounter. So the encounter was with these oozy creatures, and I wanted to give them a challenge, so I included the oozy creature that was sort of the big mama, so to speak, of the little oozes, and this creature would keep popping up. It has resolve, which is sort of the meta currency in the game, that more or less is only used to keep you alive, but sometimes abilities can proc off that, and that's what it does for monsters. You spend a resolve and it can do something. So it can spend a resolve and pop out little more of these creatures, these little oozy creatures. So eventually what happened is they did some good damage to them and were taking them down, but there was a series of I rolled crit 3 times in a row. I rolled 2 crits on the big bruiser character, whose name is Dutch. He's a Vesk soldier, and I rolled another crit on the mage technomancer named Rhodes, and that jacked him up pretty well. And then these creatures kept forming and swarming. I kept making my recharge roll and spending resolve, so they're getting overwhelmed. They fell back after all that damage to the buggy, and then Rhodes got jumped and got knocked to the ground and swarmed. And I thought they were going to leave the player's character there, this Rhodes guy, but they decided, or Dutch decided, to run over this mob, and it was hoping that he wouldn't hit or hurt Rhodes while he did it. And he actually did really well, did a lot of damage to them, knocked one back, unfortunately ran over Rhodes as well, who was already down, and missed killing him by 1 point. So the mechanic is if you roll damage equal to your hit points, if you're already at 0 and you take damage equal to your total hit points, which was 14, that's massive damage and you're dead. But he rolled a 13 for the damage, and Rhodes was barely alive. So Rhodes also has to spend his meta currency called Resolve to stay alive, and you have to spend a quarter of it to stabilize, or 1 Resolve per round so you won't die. So it's up to you. Best to spend the quarter and stabilize. But then, if you take massive damage, well, you're screwed again, right? So then the other players, while the Vesk drove over them, the other players goes by Vess. He is a satyr, not Strix. So a winged, so like a male harpy called a Strix, or the race species is called Strix, and they're male and females, but they kind of like bird folk, but they look like Strixian harpy type. That's what they're kind of based on. So he is able to grab Rhodes, and then the other character, Proto Z, who is an android envoy, he's got his little dagger out, and he is actually able to do a full attack and do enough damage to stab the little proto-molecules, proto-oozes that are sticking to Rhodes. So they save him. And we decided to stop after that, because that was pretty crazy. And they're all beat up. Like, all of them are beat up. So we'll see what we're going to do next time. But hey, they saved Rhodes, and they risked their lives for it, so I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, that's my Starfinder recap of Horizons of the Vast, and as well as another, I guess, lunch recap and breakwork recap. So hope you enjoyed this segment. On to the next thing. A bunch of call-ins by Peoples. Hey, everyone. I got to play in a game on Thursday night. So we have what we've tried to make like our Thursday night Discord group every other week, and we run various games. And tonight, Jason Connerly ran a DCC funnel that takes it's called Blackout in Crater Valley. I'm not going to talk about the specifics. It's like 80s. It's a DC funnel where you play high school seniors in the 80s. And you can go on to Jason's latest podcast where he talks about his review of it. Again, it's spoiler-free, and I really enjoyed it. There's a comment on Discord that I don't like one-shots because I'm always thinking, not that I won't play in them, but it's like a convention game, right? And I want to play more. And Jason presented the game well enough that I was like, this would make a really cool urban fantasy set in the 80s as a bunch of high school seniors, and I could totally see how you could continue. There are definitely some tweaks one would have to do, and Jason outlines a lot of those. But I had a lot of fun. I was surprised all my funnel level 0 characters survived. They were a wide range of different and interesting characters. One was a young Republican. One was a class clown. One was a lifeguard, and one was an outcast, not really an outcast, misfit, who had he was collected insects. Probably played D&D, so or at least I played that up. But and I just wanted to get in that Stranger Things, where the one character keeps asking, when are we going to play D&D? So they all survived. I was surprised. It would be hard to pick which one would continue if it was an ongoing game. Other players lost one or two of their characters, maybe two, half. But I thought the pacing was good. It did go long. I think we bought in. We did a lot of role playing early on, and bought into our different characters and our relationships, which I thought was really neat. And maybe that bogged things down. And we did some things that were a little wild and wacky within the context of the game, which I thought was kind of cool. I thought it was fun for me that way, to give it a name. An 80s movie, I think we referenced Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink. So Some Kind of Wonderful, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? So we referenced a lot of, so it was kind of cool, I thought. And then, what else? I thought it has a very satisfying conclusion. Jason talks about how he felt it was underpowered, but I think we just got lucky, honestly. I feel like there are a lot of times when we could have had an encounter, like you roll random encounters, and we didn't. There are a lot of times when we won initiative, and we probably shouldn't have, because we're 0 level characters and have no bonuses, and the adversaries do, and we just rolled well. So sometimes that happens. I think it could have gone. There are definitely some adversaries that could start wiping the floor and killing a party member every round, but that just didn't seem to happen with some lucky hits, including crits, doing extra damage and all that. So I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it if you can pick up the product. Again, Jason has more information on his latest podcast and notes on where you can get it. But I just thought it kind of inspired me to really think about a DCC urban fantasy type game, and to use that rule set to give occupations and backgrounds. And I think you could still do, I don't know if it would be worth looking at other DCC products, or you could just use wizard, warrior, thief. I mean, it'd be human centric, so you wouldn't use halfling, dwarf, elf, but there might be other classes around various DCC products that would totally work. I'd have to look into my Umerica stuff and see if any of those would work. I don't know. Maybe they could be adapted, but I think it was really neat. I had fun. So that's a recap of our Blackout in Crater Valley. At the beginning of the podcast, we had Jason Connerly commenting again on our Pantheons discussion, and what about clerics where you have a world with multiple pantheons. I guess they would be clerics of a particular deity, and clerics that have competing pantheon, or if a cleric is of all the deities, it would be a cleric of that particular pantheon. I mean, you would had, I'm trying to think, I mean, historically, I probably am totally wrong about this, but I feel you had cults of a particular, you had priests of a particular deity, like, the oracles at Delphi, the priests of the Temple of Jupiter, etc. Right? So, I'm not sure that you would have a cleric of an overall religion, except when you get to like a monotheistic culture, and then you have clerics that are Christian, right? Christian warrior priests, or in Judaism, the priests of the temple, right? So clerics are a weird, unique thing to D&D, and you have clerics of pantheons, which I guess would work, I think. Anyway, that was Jason at the beginning, and yeah, I mean, and then you could, although I feel like when, I would have to go back and look, but I feel like when they added Greyhawk and they started adding the deities in Greyhawk, I don't know how early on it was. Maybe it was even, post Gary Gygax in TSR, like 2nd edition type. Then you go more towards clerics of a particular deity as opposed to a cleric of a particular pantheon. And I know they discuss this in the 3.x editions, because I remember in Calamar, for example, there was an option that you could be a priest of a particular deity or a priest of a particular group of deities, depending on the region you live. So maybe it's just region dependent, and maybe you would have priests of the pantheon or not. I mean, I know in a game that we are currently running, there are a couple of faiths. This game, Jackals by J.M. Defoe, and you have priests from Gurwa who are disciples or adherents, devotees of the 6 and the 9, 6 and the 8, something like that. So they are sort of clerics of a pantheon. But then in another culture, you have, since it's monotheistic, you have a priest or devotee of a particular god. So it's just different, right? It just depends on the culture, I would say, and it could probably work either way, even within the same game world. You have priests or clerics of a particular pantheon, or priests of the cult of a particular deity. At least that's my opinion. And I would probably be flexible. Why not? Right, so next we have a couple more call-ins, and then we'll call it a show. Call-in from Jason Hobbs, who is going to play in the Jackals game, and he commented about his Jackals experience in creating characters in his latest Random Screed podcast. And then we have a call from Joe Richter. So let's hear what they have to say.
Hey Carl, it's Hobbs. A couple things. I'm like way late to the conversation about shared worlds, but I sort of wonder why. Why do you want shared worlds? You want people to have the same characters and go to different places? I'm not sure about all that, I guess. If as far as Jackals goes, I'm probably going to do some talk about it in my next Random Screed, probably later tonight, December 1st, 2021. And I had fun making the characters. It was crunchier than I thought. I mean, it only took an hour to make 3 characters, and that was going through the whole process like you mentioned. So it's not terrible. And it could have been done way faster than that, but I'm not that used to that type of system, I guess. Anyway, thanks for running it. Good show. Talk at you.
Hey Hobbs, thanks for calling in. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I know you hate making characters, as you've shared many times in the past, and it would have been cool to do pre-gens, but I think just knowing what the characters' motivations are is pretty important. And I do want to emphasize their goals and motivations and retirement plan, because that was one of the questions. So, and then what makes them tick, right? So I thought the most interesting thing to me is that 2 of the players decided their characters that wisdom was more important than power. That's very interesting to me. And it's a really neat makeup. I mean, the party composition may vary because I'm going to run, however, and there's a henchman mechanic in there if there are not enough, or there is like not 3 players or more, or maybe even with 3 players, then you might want to consider getting henchmen or hiring henchmen anyway. But yeah, that mechanic is in there, so I want to run, as no matter what. I know the holidays are coming up, so I'm hoping we can run the next time. I will figure that out and let you guys know. But I did enjoy the questions, and I did enjoy that. Right, I see a lot of times in RPG products that you get these. They ask you to have these 20 questions, and depending on the GM, I've been in situations where they insist or not answering the 20 questions or whatever. But there's really no. I thought it was nice that JM put in there that there is some reward for going through this. So you got 3 passive advancements, which is a chance to increase your skill with a roll, and you got to roll over, or an active advancement, which means you can actually choose to increase a skill by 10, do a whole host of other things. So, and some people decided to save that advance, which is good because you can increase your attributes with active advances. So, kind of neat. So, I enjoyed it. I know we didn't get really into the play, but definitely this next time it looks like we will start with some combat. So it'd be good for me to review the clash system. And just FYI, I was able to order. So there'll definitely be more visuals, and I'll probably use the Roll20 a bit more. You'd mentioned Kevin Madison's map, which he shared with us apparently, which was kind of neat. I'll try to figure things out and fix things up on the Roll20. And I did get the PDFs because they were on sale on Osprey, the Osprey site. And I did order The Fall of the Children of Bronze. So, yeah. So anyway, I will talk at you later. And thanks for the call.
Yo, Carl, just listening to Jason start leaving his messages about Pantheons. And yeah, if you're playing on one world, I totally get the idea of having a single Pantheon where regionally that Pantheon is viewed differently. But the idea that's being bandied around is playing in a portal game where you can go from portal to portal, world to world. And if that's the case, then you probably would have multiple Pantheons because it's not one shared world. It's a bunch of different worlds. So yeah, what else does Jason have to say?
Actually, that would be what would happen, I would imagine. That you would have multiple Pantheons, and maybe that could be part of the whole crisis in the portal of connected worlds, right? That might be interesting. And actually, I didn't answer Jason Hobbs' question from his call-in either about the idea of a shared world. And I guess there are two ideas that have been thrown out there. And like you stated, your original conception was we all play like in Golarion or the Forgotten Realms, and we play in different regions, and we have different GMs running their campaign in different regions, and even using different incarnations. I mean, I guess it would be contiguous, but using different rule sets was also thrown out there. I don't know if that will work. And this is in contrast to what others have proposed, which is, like you said, different worlds connected through portals. And I thought Jason had a really good idea. I don't want to ruin anything because I really feel like we want to get a panel discussion about this because it'd be kind of neat. But you could do this either in a fantasy setting or kind of like a sci-fi setting, I think. And I don't know how they would definitely be different and what they would entail. But yeah, I guess those are the two choices. Multiple worlds connected through a series of portals or gates, or playing in one world and just running in different regions, right? Like I think if we did that, then I would take like Numeria maybe, or further north, like the land of the Lindhorn Kings, if we're talking Golarion, to run something, which would kind of be cool. Or I'd always wanted, but like they had this one adventure path where it's like a sort of a colonization, and I thought they were going to actually go across the whole ocean and colonize the quote-unquote new world, but it really wasn't. It was like an island in the middle of the kind of the Aslanti Ocean or something. I know I'm throwing out a lot of Pathfinder geography that not a lot of people know or care about, but that one was underwhelming, the adventure path. To me, when I read through it, it's like, this is not what I thought this would be. I really liked the one adventure path where you travel over the North Pole. I thought that was really neat, and I ran it. And of course, as usual, well, in general, my adventure paths get to book 3, and then they peter out, and this one was no exception. We got to the top of the world, and I think we actually were at the North Pole, had an encounter there, and then it kind of petered out. It's interparty strife driven by interplayer conflict. So sometimes that happens. But anyway, it'd be really fun to get this panel discussion going, guys. So let's talk about it soon. I think I'm going to call it here on this particular episode. I have played already in 2 more games, various incarnations of the world's best role-playing game, D&D, a 5e game, and a Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, a 2nd edition game that we're running. I don't know when the 3rd edition's coming out soon, but anyway, those are both run by Kevin Madison of Dungeon Musings, and I'll talk about them in a separate podcast. So all that's left to say is then thank you so much, TJ Drennan, for the music, And that's the wonderful riffs that you were here going out. Take us away, Maestro Drennan.